Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Hype with Black Enterprise. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President and the Executive Editor at Large. And this episode of Beyond the Hype is brought to you by JP Morgan Chase. Listen, we're going to have a powerful conversation with another amazing guest, but the topic really is about Black mental health. Now, this is not the first time we've addressed the topic on Beyond the Hype. It is not the first time that Black Enterprise has addressed this topic, but our guest today is uniquely positioned to talk about the confluence of two major things that are going on. One, kind of a new revolutionary acceptance in the Black community of mental health being discussed, being addressed, being dealt with beyond the historical stigmatization of those topics in the Black community. On the other hand, and by the way, that revolution is often being led by celebrities like Taraji P. Henson and Simone Biles, the greatest of all time gymnasts. But on the other hand, we're still seeing escalating cases of depression, anxiety, and of course, high-profile suicides. The person that we have on today is Dr. Jeff Rocker, the celebrity therapist, and he has been dealing with these issues on obviously a personal client level, but also as an advocate level for this topic across the country, and I would say around the world, for a very, very long time. Please welcome to the show, celebrity therapist, Jeff Rocker.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So Jeff, to kind of start this thing off, I mean, you gave some powerful insights at our most recent Black Men Excel Summit, along with Jay Barnett and Kevin Durden, of Hurdle. And so we talked about this, and obviously it's been an ongoing conversation. But what is your take on kind of this, what I'm calling like a revolution, or maybe a revelation of, I would say, the last 5 or so years, where high profile Black people and other Black people are now finally saying, I don't care about the stigma. I don't care what my mama used to say, my grandma used to say, what my culture used to say. We need to deal with these issues. I mean, this is your profession, this is your calling. What are you seeing, and what have you been seeing in this space with regard to Black people and mental health?
I mean, to be honest, Alfred, I mean, just having that conversation, it's a beautiful thing to see across the country. Now you have more celebrities in different fields. It'll be football, basketball, gymnastics, whatever the case may be. Now the conversation about mental health is now in everyday households. Would it be Black families, Hispanic families, and everyday people? But I think that seeing these conversations being had in a public view goes a long way right now, because like you mentioned, you have people like Taraji P, you got people like LeBron James talking about it a lot more, Simone Biles. I mean, there's a lot of people talking about it, and for good reason, because as you see it more recently, unfortunately, we had people in the entertainment industry who lost their loved ones because for whatever reason, they was going through something that they never shared with another professional with. And this is why, I'm encouraging everybody, if you're feeling some type of way, talk to somebody about it. And this is why, for me, I'm so passionate about this field, because there's a lot of people who are suffering in silence. There's a lot of people who are committing suicide. There's a lot of people who are going through so many things that they don't feel comfortable sharing with people who are close to or even professionals, for many different reasons, whether it be because of finances or because there's not a lot of people within the field who look like them, who talk like them, who they feel like they can relate to. But I think that just having that conversation, having people like myself in the public eye, talking about mental health goes a long way within the community.
And while suicide is obviously kind of the most maybe extreme negative outcome of when people don't get the help they need, there's a long spectrum of other things that happen along the way: self-harming, substance abuse, destructive compulsive behaviors. How important it is for people to understand, because again, you're in kind of a unique space as a therapist that deals with a lot of celebrities, athletes, and others, for people to understand that the things that impact human beings impact all human beings, and that just because I'm beautiful or I'm rich or I'm famous or I'm popular, it doesn't change the basic fundamental factors that impact a person's mental health.
I always say, as human beings, we always want to be accepted by our peers, and particularly for celebrities, because their peers, their fans is a wide range of people. So what happens in that case is that they focus on what they do for a living, whether it be acting, modeling, or even in athletics, as a way to disassociate themselves from mental health issues and not deal with them. So in a way that becomes their distraction. So because of that, let's say for a football player, they'll catch passes or throw touchdowns. Everybody's praising them. However, that same person may be going through mental health issues, but because everybody's praising them for what they do for a living, it tends to neglect taking care of themselves. Up until now, they can't function in the personal life. So on the field, they're doing great, but their personal life is suffering. That's why they have failed relationships, or they have failed relationships with their family members and friends. And sometimes they have feelings of being alone. So believe me, outside looking at them, it looks like that athlete or that person has everything going on for themselves, but really they are suffering inside. So that's it. I see that happen a lot of times, more often than not, believe it or not.
Man, you hit on a really important point, and I know you're going to preserve the confidentiality of your clients, and I'm going to preserve the confidentiality of my friends. But I have friends who are professional athletes. I have friends who are professional entertainers, actors, performers. And one of the elements that I see, I'll name two things. Often the thing they do for a living, like you said, they're rewarded for financially, applause, attention, is actually a way for them to either camouflage their issues or actually either channel that issue and be rewarded. And I'm thinking of a good friend of mine who's fortunately has gotten help and is much healthier now. But pro football was a way for him to legally be abusive and violent and to let out his rage. He's like, I get paid to punish people, and I needed to punish people because I had this rage. And football, from the time he was in high school, was his way to legitimately, and it's a socially acceptable way, to really assault people. And he said it took him all the way until toward the end of his pro career, when he realized that, again, the thing that the whole world is applauding is actually feeding into unhealthy behaviors that obviously, once he left the game, was not going to be appropriate. And you think about, I'm a natural bodybuilder, and you think about bodybuilders that end up going to jail for, domestic abuse, and they beat somebody up because the rage and the aggressiveness that's rewarded in one arena is feeding an unhealthy behavior, and obviously a behavior that's a symptom of a larger unresolved mental health issue.
It is.
The other thing I see among actors and entertainers is that, at least historically, because I think it's better now, you don't want to not get called for the audition. You don't want somebody to say, that person, your career could be at stake depending on what your reputation is in terms of managing. So there's financial, there's social, and there's other barriers that we don't think about when we think of the rich and the famous and the popular, that make them say, you know what, I'm not trying to deal with that right now.
One thing I would say is that I feel like a lot of celebrities feel like they don't have the luxury to take the time to take care of themselves. Where other people may have the time, they don't feel like the world will allow them to take a step back. Even Simone Biles, I remember when she first came out, said, you know what, I'm not going to perform for an event. There was a lot of praise, but there was also a lot of criticism because people expect her to perform. And once you said, no, I cannot perform, there was a lot of people that were very upset. And that's just one of many stories where a lot of people feel like they're obligated to perform at a high level every day, despite what they're going through in their everyday life. And that's what a lot of people go through on a day-to-day basis, which many people don't realize. And some people contribute to that too.
Yeah, I mean, we see it both as well as in corporate American entrepreneurs who may not be as famous as a Simone Biles or LeBron James, but there's this feeling like, first of all, I'm the successful person in my community. I'm the successful person in my family. I'm the successful person in my church. I can't really complain because they're going to look at me and say, look, you got the mansion on the hill. You got the Benzo. You got the corner office. You got the 6-figure salary. You got the designer clothes. You almost don't feel like you have a right to complain, much less say, I need a break. I need to pull back. And then, of course, you look at Black executives and Black women executives in particular, getting off the track may mean you may not get back on the track. If you're trying to become a CEO or a high-level executive, like, I can't afford to appear weak, and I can't afford a disruption in my career path to get to where I'm trying to go. And as a result, like you said, there's a tremendous amount of pressure to say, I got to perform no matter what. These people want me to perform, and I can't not perform.
And then when that happens, they get themselves into a lot of trouble. So, in their arena, wherever they're performing at, they do very well. Once they leave the arena, they are struggling very much. And that's why you see, even in that industry, you see a lot of people have failed relationships. Because how often do you see that where people are married in 1 year, then the very following year they get divorced because they don't have the time, or they feel like they don't have the time to focus on their personal life. The only thing they focus on is their professional life because they feel like they have to. And that just, and by the way, when I say celebrity, I always say we all are celebrities in our own circle. Where to be, you could be the oldest child within your family, you could be the only child that went to college, and even within that circle, you're a celebrity within your own circle as well. So I think we all are celebrities if you look hard enough. So that's what I mean when I talk about celebrities.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Jeff, because I tell people whoever is the highest achieving or most visible members of the family tend to be the celebrities of the family. Like, like me, I go home, I was just with my family this past weekend with my cousins and my siblings. And I'm looking at myself like I'm the same dude that used to have rock fights with you when we were kids, But they have an expectation of me because, but you work at Black Enterprise and you live in New York and you do this and you interview Jeff Rocker and and I didn't really start to recognize what kind of, I would use the word pressure that put me under until about 20 years ago. I was like, man, these people have some expectations of me. I can't come home and say, man, I remember the first time I came home and complained to my mother about something that was going on with my kids in school. And I need to make some more money because my mother was looking at me, and my mother is somebody who never made more than, $7,000 a year with, plus public assistance. Cause I was, that was the background I came from. She's looking at me like, please don't even come to me with that. You got first world problems. You got real problems. But again, so you either feel guilty for even admitting that you are having problems, or the people around you are saying things that are very unhelpful, like just cheer up, just get over it, just, and you're a professional at this, and it's your profession and your calling. We all know it's not just as simple as cheering up and getting over it.
Not at all. It takes work. It takes a lot of work. It's a journey. If it was that easy, everybody would be happy, which is not the case. People are going through things all the time. Some things are a lot more serious than others, but when you get to that point where it's too much, that's the point you got to seek help.
So let me ask you this, as someone who's been doing this long before. I mean, like I said, now it's almost fashionable to talk about mental health and to talk about the therapist you're seeing, and I'm on medication and I'm not ashamed of it, which is all good. Again, all good. But what do you think is the biggest difference? And I'm talking about positive differences for you. From your unique position and from your observation of your profession and the people you deal with, that has changed from what it used to be when you hid it, you denied it, you were stigmatized by it, and now we do seem to be experiencing this. I keep calling it a revolution of, hey, let's talk about it. We talk about it on social media. We talk, but I guess I'm trying to get at, is this just kind of a fad, or are you hopeful that this is really a new culture shift in America and in Black America in particular?
I think it's a new culture shift. I'll say this. First of all, the coronavirus is a terrible thing that happened to all of us. Let me just throw that out there. However, what it has done is it has exposed a lot of people to mental health issues that they didn't know they had before. When the president told all of us to stay at home, where we couldn't use work or school as a distraction, we were forced to deal with our mental health issues or issues that we're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. I think at that point, that's where the shift has changed. Now people realize, you know what? I really do need help. I can't put this to the side no more. I can't use school as a distraction. I can't use work as a distraction. I can't use anything in the outside world as a distraction. I have to deal with this. And since then, I think, more people have been talking about it. More people have been forced to deal with it. They've been forced to deal with their marriages, their family, their anxiety, depression, and so forth. So I think that has changed everything regardless to within the field. Now, even to the point where now, of course, counselors are providing telehealth. So where you felt like, in certain areas, and let's say I'm just throwing out a city or a state, like Wisconsin, Michigan, where there's not a lot of providers who look like you or talk like you. Now you can find a provider in different states as well. So these things have definitely opened up doors for a lot of people. I think they're having a conversation also in conjunction, therapists in conjunction with life coaches, all working together to make, to help the community. because that's where it starts. It starts with us. As long as we giving the work, you putting the work in, we are, of course, likable and being in the public eye. I think a lot more people are more willing to receive services.
You used the word isolation. I think it's important to talk about that even a little bit more, because again, that was something that whether you were just a regular frontline worker working, at a grocery store, or you were a quote unquote celebrity, that isolation was real for everybody. And I interviewed everybody on this show from Wayne Brady to Lorenz Tate to Taraji Turner.
It's hard.
And Adele Givens, just people who are in one way or another entertainers or in the entertainment industry, not necessarily entertainers. And one of the things that was a common thread was what you just said. They're isolated. They can't produce anything. They can't go on set. And for Wayne Brady in particular, and I'm making this point because it wasn't always a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It forced us to take a good look at ourselves and our lives and what we were feeling and be honest about it, and then do something about it. And as you said, for so many of us for decades, we had work and other things to say, yeah, but I'll be all right and I'll get to it later. And as a result, this revolution not only happened for us culturally as a group, but for many individuals, they actually came out of it healthier, not because they didn't have issues, but for the first time, maybe in decades, they addressed those issues. They were honest about who they are and how they were feeling with each other, with like you said, with relationships, with their kids, with their parents. And it wasn't easy, but I talked to person after person after person, both entertainment and sports and non-entertainment and sports, who said, the truth is I came out better for it.
No, I agree. Listen, I'm an extrovert. So when I was isolated from people, I struggled. So for me personally, I struggled, So I had to learn how to, to adapt to a new way of living for the time being. But it took me some time. I fell into some form of a depression as well, for a short time period. But I fell into that. But I had to regather myself and also talk to a therapist as well to put myself back on task because, listen, even as a professional, you still have to take care of yourself as well. Self-care is very important for all of us. When you're not taking care of yourself, I don't care who you are, I don't care what status you are, you're gonna go through it as well. So for me, it was a self-reflection for me to be like, you know what? Let me just check in with myself and make sure I'm doing everything I need to do, whether it be meditation, whether it be working out, whether it be, just doing little things that make me feel a little bit better just to make sure I can function on a day-to-day basis. So believe me, nobody there's no exception to mental health issues, So I don't care who you are, where your status at, you gotta take care of yourself.
One of the things that I think is uniquely special, and I'm biased because I'm talking about people that I know personally, like again, you, Jay Barnett, about probably 8 or 9 brothers in your space doing what you do, who are my friends, who are, I mean, you and I just get to know each other, but they're my friends. And I've been this like advocate as a non-therapist for being public about mental health. I have a standing weekly appointment with my therapist. I talk about it on social media. I believe I was really about getting this word out. And as a result, I got to know a bunch of brothers who are doing the work that you're doing and been doing it. It's not like, it's fashionable now, but you've been doing it when people didn't want to hear it. But one of the things I think you guys have in common, and you kind of touched on it, is you're keenly aware of the necessity of self-care to do the work that you do, because as Black people and as Black men in particular, you're often treating people with the same, who've been impacted by the same traumas that you have. You may have reacted to it in different ways, but and again, I can't speak for all therapists of all backgrounds and of all genders. I just know the brothers I know, almost all can say, I know what you're feeling because I felt it too. I know what you're going through because I've gone through it too, or I've seen it in my family and I've seen it, and can uniquely relate to the patient or to the client, but at the same time also can recognize, I need to pull back from this and recover in the same way somebody might in law enforcement might know I've been seeing too much of this stuff. I need to get some help. Because when you're exposed to trauma, that in fact is traumatic. Talk to me about again a little bit more about self-care, both for yourself and why self-care, which is also now in style now. Everybody and their mother is talking about self-care, which is a good thing. But talk about that, and that's a little bit different from, it's related to therapy, but it's different from therapy, because I tell people self-care is the therapy you do for yourself in between the help you get from other people, the maintenance help.
Well, I'll say this, there's two things that prevents people from receiving therapy or taking care of it, is pride and perception. So just a second ago, I talked about how I suffer from depression. So many of my colleagues would probably look at the situation where, they're therapists, but they wouldn't feel comfortable talking about how mental health issues that they share, because they feel like they're not allowed to share these type of things. Same thing that celebrities go through, same thing a CEO or anybody in a high position would feel like that they're not allowed to deal with these type of issues, which is not the case. I think that the more people in a higher position that could talk about mental health in the general public, I think the more better off we'll be as a community, because like I said, there's no exception to the rule. We all got to take care of ourselves. I don't care what you choose to do. It'll be journaling, meditation, yoga, working out. There's a list of things you could be doing, but you got to take care of yourself. So I think for me, other people in the industry, other people in the public eye, on TV, on the radio, I think that the more times they are being open about sharing about the mental health issues that they may be going through, or just struggles in general they be going through, I think the more likely that people will be more comfortable talking about the issues and also seeking professional help for it. So it starts with us.
My personal mission in this space, if I have one, again, I'm not a professional. I'm just, a regular professional entrepreneur trying to make it through.
My brother, advocate.
Yeah, an advocate, absolutely an advocate, a serious advocate. Mm-hmm. I tell people, because over the last, let's say, 5 years, my therapist the goal was not to get me well, but to keep me well. And I say it to me, like I've been seeing him, and he wasn't my first therapist. Before, I would wait until there was a crisis. I've been divorced more than once, or I'm going through something. And then I need a therapist. I go to the therapist, we work things out, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm good, I'm out, until the next crisis. We're using therapy and mental health as emergency medicine. It's like, I'm not going to go to the doctor until the leg has fallen off. And I remember I had this revelation about, again, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, you know what? I called my therapist. I said, I think I should start seeing you again. And he's like, what's wrong? I said, actually, nothing is wrong. I said, I want to start now looking at seeing you the same way I would see going to the gym and staying in shape so I don't get sick, or eating
or
better.
Even your primary doctor, because you do a physical every year, right?
Right, I do my physical every year. You go to the dentist to get cleanings. I said, I want to think of my meetings with you now as me just maintaining, staying well, the way I would do for any other thing. And he was like, okay. And so we have a standing appointment. Now, if I'm traveling, I got something else to do, it's not an emergency. So we're like, we won't meet this Saturday. But I really want to get us to the point where we just think of, like you said, going to see a therapist twice a year, just the way you go get your physical, or you go get your teeth cleaned or whatever, just to get a check at least of what your levels are and where you are.
It's a very blurry situation in the sense that, of course, not every mental health issue is a mental health illness. So of course, mental health illness, you definitely need to see a therapist. Mental health issues, of course, you're human. So a lot of times you can deal with it. Sometimes you can't. And I guess knowing the difference could go a long way. Yes. So I guess being able to educate the community when it's time to seek help, and when you can do certain things by yourself. Because at the end of the day, you can't always use a therapist for everything, right? Because the therapist can't be there every day for you. Because you have to learn how to take care of things on your own. However, you have to realize when you're unable to function, when you're unable to go to work, unable to to focus in school, unable to have stable relationships, at that point you have to realize, okay, I need some professional help.
Absolutely. So you just mentioned something else I want to talk about because of your unique experiences, the whole idea of stable relationships. A lot of relationships that we thought were stable, especially during the pandemic, but they were stable only because we were away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, we had distractions, so we could avoid dealing with our differences on how to handle money, or avoid dealing with differences of what to do with our in-laws, or avoid dealing with differences about changes in our sex life, or whatever that could cause an issue. We could avoid it because you got to go to work, I got to go to work, we got to take care of these kids. And a lot of relationships, and again, we talk about the big celebrity relationship flameouts, but the truth is a lot of relationships took a lot of hits in that period from February 2020 to present, when now you couldn't hide, you couldn't run, you couldn't distract. Talk to me about what you see and what's important for us to pay attention to. And I don't mean just husband and wife relationships or boyfriend, girlfriend, or lover relationships, parent, child. You know, we saw a lot of families being pushed together in small spaces with no place to go. And you know, everything from divorce to domestic violence to other things escalated as a result. So what are you seeing and what are you recommending that people really do to really be proactive about protecting their relationships and dealing with those issues?
You know, over the years, the changes that I'm seeing right now is that we just don't know how to communicate with each other. And one of the reasons why we lost our ways because now we're starting to communicate through technology. You know, I think the other day I went to a restaurant, you know, and I was watching a couple right next door, and all they was doing was, right, like I said, they're texting each other. Mind you, they're right across from each other, but they're also texting or they're on social media. So people lost their way how to communicate on a day-to-day basis. So technology has its pros, but one of the cons is people don't know how to communicate, and things are left in the open where people are not being transparent, or they're not able to identify how they feel and how to fix situations. Because you know, for communication, I always say it's a 3-step process. The first step is always to, of course, sounds easy to express yourself, but a lot of people have a problem doing that, whether it be men or women, or people who've been in traumatic relationships, but they have a very hard time identifying their emotions and how to express themselves. You know, the second step I would say is to explain yourself. You know, the problem about communication is that sometimes your partner does not understand where you're coming from, and people feel like they should know where they're coming from. And because when I always say when you use the word "should," you already lost the conversation, because you know, you can't say they should do this or they should know this, because that's not the case. People come from different upbringings, people raised very differently, so you can't expect people to know things just because you said something one time. So of course, explaining goes a long way. And the third step is, of course, looking for a resolution to the problem. That third step is key because people always look at things that it's black and white. It's my way or her way. It's her way or my way. But you got to realize life is not black and white. It's all gray. There's multiple options, there's multiple opportunities, multiple ways to solve an issue. And people tend to stick to their guns and be like, no, we got to do it this way. And this is how people get stuck within a relationship. And when that occurs, of course, nothing gets solved, and the issue gets bigger and bigger until, of course, people separate. So I think going back to the basics, we got to learn how to communicate a lot better, because over the years we gotten a lot worse in doing so.
Yeah, I think the other aspect of technology, which again, there are benefits to it.
There are benefits, yeah.
But one of the other negatives is that the good news is you could do a lot more than you used to be able to do.
Yes.
The bad news is that we overschedule, overplan, and I'm guilty of it. I'm telling you, man, I'll have a book open because I do still read. It happened to me today. I had a book open I was reading. I had my phone and I kept checking my social media, and then I had my computers next to me, and I had to really tell myself, close the laptop, at least put the phone out of arm's reach and read. And that's with me sitting in the house by myself. Imagine 3, 4, 5 people kind of pay attention to each other, but not listening. And you talk about it. It's a breeding ground for miscommunication, for people to feel offended, ignored, neglected, disregarded. And all you need is one person to say, quote unquote, one wrong thing, and everything goes up in flames.
Blow up. Oh boy. It's crazy to see, but this the ages that we live in. I think that, like anything else in life, you just have to balance it out. I would say particularly for married couples or people in serious relationships, there's four different areas, or three to four, depending on which situation. Mm-hmm. Self, people tend to neglect that. Our CEOs and entrepreneurs out there, we tend to neglect self sometimes, but we gotta take care of ourselves. Now, listen, I struggle too at times, so I can't say it's just anybody else. It's me too, but because we're trying to make money, we're trying to excel, we're trying to become we're trying to be wealthy, of course. But to do that, you also got to take care of yourself. You also got to take care of your relationships. That's meaningful to you, whether it be your family, your wife, your partner, your mom, your dad, everybody else. You got to balance it out throughout your life. You got to. And of course, your career. Sometimes nowadays people spend about like 70% of the time in the career, but that's not really balanced if you look at it, because you have to focus on other areas in your life as well.
You know,
So,
a lot of people found out, again, and it was a good thing when they were honest about it, that the career that really was for them when they started 15, 20 years ago, maybe, and now they were just used to doing it. And the pandemic, and we're looking at the great resignation. Yeah, some of it is take this job and shove it. But a lot of it is, you know, I've been doing this like on automatic for 15 years, and I just realized this is not what I want to do anymore. And I never got a chance to slow down enough to be honest with myself, and that's a form of self-care, to say, is this what I really want to be doing, or is this what I want to really be doing? I think just being able to get off of autopilot, you know, even if you have no mental health issues, but you know, you get into a routine and you have to go so fast, and technology almost pushes you to go faster, and you're supposed to be accessible 24/7, and that email can come in at 10 o'clock at night, you're supposed to say something. I think a lot of just regular maintenance, even if you have no glaring mental health issues, is being able to slow down enough to feel yourself, to feel your thoughts, to feel your body, and make conscious decisions about what you want to do with your life.
that's true. And, you know, I'll just think about something as well, is how in our careers, we don't tend to get very complacent. But in our personal life, we become very complacent. And it's very interesting that that's the case, because both areas you got to put in work. But in one area, it's like, you know, I got more work at my job means more money for me. In our personal life, we don't see it the same way. We don't put more time in our personal life thinking, okay, it's going to improve my relationship. It's like, oh, I'm married to her. She'll be all right. She'll be here for the long run. Or I got kids. They'll be here. They're not going nowhere until they're 18 and ready to go to college. That's not the case. You got to put in work. So this is why it's very important to be able to balance your time all across the board, because if you don't, one of these areas will be neglected. And when that happens, that becomes a problem for you as well. So you got to take all areas of your life.
So I knew this was going to go by fast, but I'm trying to make sure I get everything I can out of you while you're with us.
Okay.
What are some things now we're looking at where we are now, all the positive things we talked about in terms of at least now we can have the conversation, where once upon a time you could even have the conversation. I know you just did Black Men Excel and on the excellent panel that you guys did. And I think I told you when I asked you to do it, the mental health session at Black Men Excel every year is the biggest, most popular session when we were doing it physically, when we did it virtually. But I remember the first year we did Black Men Excel and we thought we wanted to do the session. We didn't do it the first year because the fear was, man, if we do this, ain't nobody gonna come. That room's gonna be empty. It's gonna be crickets, you know. But now we're here. It's good that we're here. It's good that, you know, one, you have Black men such as yourself. Now, there's not enough of you.
Not at all.
The beautiful thing is that you are really visible, which I think is going to inspire other, you know, now even Black boys, Black teens, and Black men to say, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And I think it's really tremendously important. So we're here now.
And I just want to add on to that, because you know, particularly for me, everything I do, you know, I do it for the culture, I do it for the community, and I do it for the industry. That industry component is very important because, you know, growing up, when people talk about being a therapist, one of the things that come about is that, oh, they don't make enough money, or they don't make a lot of money. If you're in this field, you're not doing it for the money. And because of that has turned a lot of people away from this field. So I want to let people know out there who think might enter in the field that we make a good amount of money. You know, you just have to be, if it's your purpose, if you are passionate about it, trust me, you'll be good. So don't let that stop you. You know, and not only that, you know, I would say, because I grew up born and raised in Miami, you know, the kids that I was around, everybody wanted to be an athlete. No one would be a doctor, mainly because they're also doctors that are uptight, not cool. It's not fun to be a doctor, but it's fun to be an athlete, you know, because you could do certain things. You could have a nice car, have the nice house. But I'm telling you right now, you could do the same thing within this field as well and do more for your community. So when I tell we need you, we need more of you, because it's not enough for me. It's not enough about Jay Burnett. It's not enough for just people in general doing this. I think that because of that, our community is suffering the most, you know, because we have to see more of us giving help back to the community. You know, I would say that people, when we had our first Black president, that's when people started thinking, okay, now I could become a president too. When you start seeing more Black therapists in general, now people are more willing to become therapists as well. So I'm hoping for me, I'm all about paving the way for other people coming after me, because like I said, we just need a lot more of you guys, because that's the way we're gonna make these changes within our community. Because it starts with us first. I can't stress that enough. It starts with us first to make the difference within our community.
You know, I mean, you said, I'm so glad you said all of that, because obviously part of the legacy of Black enterprise is that if we could show people that these
Yes.
people exist, more people will be like them. And you're right, we need more Black people in general, and brothers in particular, in this space, because Black people in general and Black brothers in particular are in need of these services for the health of our community. But tell me about what if you were talking to our audience now, I think we got one good one. Consider being a therapist as a career choice. Talk that up among young Black people, that is something worth, or even a second career. What I'm thinking is that people talk about wanting to be an athlete, but we already know that that's going to be a short career. So, you know, how about, after my playing days is over, I could be a sports psychologist, or I could be, there's just so many opportunities in this space. But beyond the career opportunity aspects, what are some basic things that you would recommend to Beyond the Hype audience? Let's say they don't see a therapist. They're not really they don't really have a plan for addressing their mental health, but they want to get started. They want to take some baby steps toward creating a mental health regimen for themselves. What are some of the things that you would, have people do to at least get on the track of addressing their mental wellness?
Prioritize self-care. Self-care. That is very important in the midst of all mental health issues. If you're not taking care of yourself, all mental health issues will reach another level. Like I said, some of the examples are, like I said, working out, doing yoga, doing meditation, journaling. There's so many different things that you could do. Only you would know what works for you, of course.
Adjusting your nutrition. I know that's a big one.
Eating right, sleeping well. Sometimes I know entrepreneurs, we don't like to sleep. We don't sleep many hours, but we gotta get the 6 to 8 hours sleep if possible, because the body has to rest. That's the only time we do heal, is when we're sleeping. So we got to sleep well. We got to eat well as well. We can't be eating junk food. We got to try to eat at least 2 to 3 times a day. So there's a lot of different things to take care of yourself. But I would say that would be the number one things to work on, self-care, because I can give you all the therapeutic approaches. That won't mean nothing. And I say nothing if you're not taking care of yourself. So that'll be that's the first thing to do, is work on those things. Now, once you're doing those things in conjunction with therapy, then you'll start seeing a lot of changes within your life.
You remind me, I tell people, if you don't do self-care, that's like not doing scheduled maintenance on your car.
Yeah.
And just waiting for it to break down and then taking it to the mechanic. And the mechanic is saying, man, if you had now I got to replace your whole tranny. I got to rebuild your car. It's really total, really. But if you have been doing scheduled maintenance, self-care, even if you do have a problem, by the time you bring it to me, it's a lot easier for me to address it, a lot less costly financially and otherwise. So that self-care thing, you're right. It's not therapy or self-care. It's always self-care. And then there'll be times when you need professional help to get past things, just like there'll be times you need a mechanic to get your car back on the road.
And Apple, you bring up a very good point as well, is that sometimes people feel like their problems is too severe where nobody can help them. And I'm here to let people know that's not the case. I don't care what's going on in your life, divorce, separation, STD, whatever you're going through, you feel like it's just so much, it's very overwhelming. Believe me, there's people out there that can help you. So I don't care if you feel like it's not that serious or it's too serious. That's not the case. You can deal with all types of issues, because sometimes we just need somebody to lead us on the right track. And I mean, for all of us, we all need that person. Because the thing about therapy is like, it's a form of course, therapy, mentorship, coaching, parenting. It's all that. It's put into one, and and we all need that as individuals. We all need that as human beings in our lives. So believe me, don't shy away from therapy. We all need it. I don't care if it's a check-in or it's more long-term therapeutic services, but please get the help that you need.
You made that point about you thinking the problem is unsolvable, being one of the things that keeps you from getting help. The other one is the feeling like I'm all alone. And it's also always important to remember you're not the only one that's going through what you're going through, whether it's, chemical, whether it's, past trauma, whatever it is. When I just, saw some interviews with people who had attempted suicide in the past. And is that one of the things that was a recurring theme was, no one's going through what I'm going through. I can't talk to you. And the biggest thing that helped them was to connect and realize, no, I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only one that has these issues. And it doesn't automatically solve the problem, but it helps you to pull back from the edge of the cliff. And again, seek help, realizing that it's not just you.
Hey, and also check on your strong friends. I think that we get in the midst of, okay, they got it, they're okay. They never ask for help, so they must be doing okay. That's not the case. Check on people. Simple question is, are you okay? How are you doing? Is there anything that you need from me? Those 3 questions, you believe it or not, you can save someone's life, but just asking those 3 questions. So please don't think that people are just automatically doing good for themselves. Just ask them directly. Are you okay? Are you good? Is there anything I can do to help you? Because believe me, a lot more people than you think are suffering in silence.
But, yeah, we're always taken aback, and again, when it's the strong person, or the beautiful person, the popular person. What would they have to be? Why would they have a problem? And, and especially in the celebrity world, because almost every time it's a celebrity, I mean, unless they have a reputation for having had ongoing problems, substance abuse problems, but often it's the person that everybody around them said they've always been good. There was never. And of course, they were trying to deal with things on their own because they felt like they couldn't say anything was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So in the time we got left, Dr. Jeff, I really want people, obviously, during this conversation, we can never talk about everything we need to talk about. And obviously, you can't take all your expertise and experience and put it in a little capsule and give it out. But I do want people to be able to, follow up with you, follow what you're doing. Just what's the best way for people to learn more from you, learn more about what you do, what you're doing, this cause that you've been, leading the charge on for so many, many years before. Thankfully, now it's become, a trend that we're all talking about. But what's the best way for people, the Beyond the Hype audience, to keep track of what you're doing?
Yes, the audience, they could go on my website at askjeffrocker.com, or they could follow me, of course, on social media platforms like IG, at askjeff, or even on Twitter, askjeff as well, or even on LinkedIn, Dr. Jeff Rocker. So they can follow either one of those things would be the best way to keep up with what I'm doing in the general public. I just want to say also, before we go, I just want to make sure I let people know that people who are thinking about joining this field or entering this field, better yet, follow your passion. You don't have to be no traditional therapist. I want you to do what you're passionate about. For me, is working with celebrities and also people in the community, because mainly because that's some of the things I've done in my past as well, whether it be modeling, acting, playing sports, and also a musician as well. That's what led me to the field that I'm in right now. But for you, don't think that you have to follow the typical therapist or whatever that may be. So just do what's best for you, do what you're passionate about, and don't let nobody stop you.
Jeff, that's a great note to end on, because, and again, I'm only talking about the people that I know and admire like you. There's none of the people I know who are really passionate about this are just kind of generic therapists. Like, they have a thing that drives them and says,
Yep.
"Oh, this is the kind of therapist I want to be." And I think it is important for young people or people who are considering the profession to think, what do I really care about?
Yep.
And everything you care about, there's a need for a professional therapist that can actually deliver value, whether it's, if you love fashion, be a therapist to supermodels who have eating disorder issues and body image issues. My sport as an amateur is bodybuilding. I know a lot of people in the fitness industry who have lots of issues around self-perception and body image and things like that. So I think it's really important what you just said. Pursue your passion, but there's a need for therapy in every possible thing. It's something that can bring value. So Dr. Jeff, I mean, what's next for you? What are you working on now? What should we be looking for? Or are you just doing what you do, being Dr. Jeff? And just give me an idea what the Beyond the Hype audience might be checking for that you're working on.
Okay, so be sure to see me on TV soon. I'm doing a little bit of filming, so you'll definitely see me on TV on a big screen, of course. And also, in conjunction to that, or in addition to that, better yet, I also started managing artists, clinicians, and entrepreneurs, and also athletes. So I'm doing a little bit of management. I'm also doing a lot of nonprofit work within the community with my hip hop therapy sessions with the kids. So I got my hands involved in a little bit different things. So it's hard to say with all that I do, but make sure you go on my website and my social media platforms. And believe me, you'll see everything that I do on a day-to-day basis.
That man. Listen, Jeff, once again, thank you so much for taking the time, making the time to join me for this conversation. Thank you for being a guest on Beyond the Hype.
Of course, it's my pleasure being here too.
And this has been another edition of Beyond the Hype. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive Editor-at-Large at Black Enterprise. This episode of Beyond the Hype was brought to you by JP Morgan Chase, and we are so glad you could join us. See you next time.